You were not born the strong one. You became it. Roles inside families are rarely assigned out loud. They form through pressure, through instability, through emotional unpredictability, through silence. When tension enters a system, someone absorbs it. Sometimes it is the loud one, sometimes the invisible one, sometimes the fragile one, and sometimes it is you. If conflict was frequent, you became composed. If a parent was overwhelmed, you became capable. If emotions flooded the room, you learned to regulate yourself quickly. Not because you were mature, because the system required stability. Children adapt to survive environments. If expressing fear created more chaos, you minimized fear. If showing sadness added burden, you concealed sadness. If anger escalated tension, you suppressed anger. You learned restraint early. Strength, in this context, was not confidence, it was containment. Containment of your own reactions. Containment of others' distress. Containment of the atmosphere. This is how identity fuses with function. You are praised for being mature, responsible, reliable. You receive approval not for vulnerability, but for steadiness. Approval reinforces adaptation. The system stabilizes around your role. You do not break down. You do not demand. You do not complicate things. You become predictable. Predictability reduces stress for others. But stability came with a trade. You learned to manage yourself before you learned to express yourself. You learned to solve before you learned to feel. You learned to absorb before you learned to ask. The role becomes efficient. If something goes wrong, you handle it. If someone collapses emotionally, you stay grounded. If uncertainty rises, you become decisive. From the outside, this looks admirable. But internally, something subtle forms. A belief. If I fall apart, everything destabilizes. If I need too much, I become a burden. If I show weakness, I lose value. These beliefs are not dramatic. They are quiet conclusions drawn from repetition. Over time, the role solidifies. You are not just someone who can be strong, you are the strong one. And roles, once stabilized, resist change. Because if you are not the strong one, who are you? The identity began as protection. It kept the system functioning. But it also required you to suppress parts of yourself that did not fit the role. And those parts did not disappear. They waited. The role did not persist by accident. It was reinforced. You were praised for handling things well, for not complaining, for being dependable. You're so mature. You're the stable one. I don't know what we'd do without you. Praise feels warm, even when it comes attached to pressure. Approval becomes conditional. You are valued when you are composed. You are appreciated when you are useful. You are recognized when you are resilient. Vulnerability receives less attention, sometimes discomfort, sometimes dismissal. So you learn something quietly. Strength earns love. Need complicates it. You do not articulate this belief. You absorb it. If you cried and the room grew uncomfortable, you stopped crying. If you asked for help and it added stress, you stopped asking. If you expressed confusion and no one slowed down, you stopped revealing uncertainty. Adaptation becomes identity. The reward system locks in. You are relied upon. Reliance feels powerful. People come to you, trust you, lean on you. This confirms the role. But the reward has a cost. When you are the strong one, you are rarely the supported one. When you are the steady one, others assume you do not need steadying. When you are the problem solver, no one asks who solves you. There is also pride involved. You can handle more than others. You can tolerate more than others. You can endure more than others. Endurance becomes a quiet badge. But endurance without expression accumulates strain. Strain does not announce itself loudly. It appears as isolation, as emotional distance, as fatigue that is not purely physical. You may not even label it as loneliness, because you are surrounded by people. But being relied upon is not the same as being known. The role narrows emotional range. Anger feels destabilizing, so you contain it. Sadness feels inconvenient, so you minimize it. Fear feels unacceptable, so you override it. Only competence feels safe. Only capability feels allowed. This shapes adulthood. You struggle to let others see you uncertain. You default to fixing instead of feeling. You feel uneasy when someone tries to support you. Support feels foreign, almost disorienting. Because your nervous system learned, I am safer when I am the stabilizer. I am valued when I am composed. I am needed when I am strong. And being needed feels like belonging. The reward for strength was connection, but it was conditional connection. Connection built around function, not full emotional presence. The longer the role persists, the harder it becomes to question. You may not even realize how rarely you allow yourself to be fragile, because fragility was not rewarded. Strength was. And when a role is rewarded repeatedly, it becomes difficult to imagine who you would be without it. If this made you pause, like the video. Subscribe if you want to keep observing. The role does not stay in childhood. It travels. You enter adulthood already conditioned. In friendships, you are the stable one. In relationships, you are the grounded one. At work, you are the reliable one. The pattern feels natural. It feels like personality. But personality is often repetition. Repetition of what once kept you safe. If chaos once required you to be steady, you continue being steady even when chaos is gone. Your nervous system does not update easily. You struggle to ask for help. Not because you believe help is weak, because receiving help destabilizes your identity. If you are not the strong one, who carries the weight? When someone offers to support you, you feel discomfort, a tightening, a subtle resistance. It is easier to give than to receive. Giving reinforces your role. Receiving challenges it. You may also notice emotional isolation. People describe you as composed, calm, unshaken. But rarely do they describe you as vulnerable. Because vulnerability feels unsafe. Unsafe not in danger, but in identity. There is a quiet fear embedded here. If I show weakness, I will burden others. If I collapse, everything will shift. If I need too much, I will lose value. These beliefs formed early. They now operate automatically. Hypercompetence becomes armor. You anticipate problems. You handle logistics. You fix conflicts. You move quickly into solution mode. Solution mode prevents exposure. Exposure invites emotional uncertainty. But something accumulates underneath. Unspoken fatigue. Not from responsibility alone, from never being allowed to not be responsible. You may not break down. You may not implode. Instead, you feel subtly alone, even in connection, because connection requires mutual vulnerability, and your role does not easily permit that. Sometimes resentment appears quietly, not dramatic anger, just a subtle thought. No one checks on me. But you rarely signal that you need checking, because strength does not ask. The system continues. You stabilize others. You absorb tension. You maintain composure, externally admirable, internally restrictive. The role once protected you, now it confines you. You are capable of softness, capable of uncertainty, capable of asking. But the identity resists, because if you are no longer the strong one, the structure shifts, and structures resist collapse. So you remain composed, even when you are tired, even when you are overwhelmed, even when part of you wants to be held instead of holding everything together. The role protected you, but it was never meant to define you. Being the strong one began as adaptation. It stabilized chaos, it reduced tension, it earned approval. But adaptation is not identity. The difficulty is not in being strong, it is in believing strength is your only acceptable state. If composure is constant, emotion becomes threat. If capability is constant, need becomes shame. If steadiness is constant, fragility feels dangerous. Letting go of the role does not mean collapsing. It means allowing range. Range of emotion, range of dependence, range of expression. The first disruption often feels uncomfortable. You hesitate before admitting you're overwhelmed. You pause before asking for support. You feel exposed, revealing uncertainty. Exposure feels risky, not because it is unsafe, because it contradicts the script you learned. You may fear that others will see you differently, less reliable, less capable, less composed. But often what shifts is not respect, it is intimacy. When you stop performing strength, you become visible. Not just useful, not just dependable, visible. And visibility allows reciprocity. Reciprocity changes dynamics. You are no longer only the stabilizer, you are also the one who can lean, the one who can falter, the one who can be held. This does not erase your strength, it integrates it. Strength becomes choice instead of obligation. Composure becomes flexible instead of rigid. Capability remains, but is no longer the only permitted trait. You may notice something subtle. Relief. Relief in not having to hold everything. Relief in not being the emotional anchor at all times. Relief in admitting when something affects you. The role once kept you safe, but safety through suppression limits connection. Safety through identity rigidity limits authenticity. When you soften the role, you do not lose strength, you gain dimension. You are still competent, still reliable, still steady, but you are also human, capable of strain, capable of confusion, capable of need. The strong one was a function. You are more than the function. And when you allow yourself to step outside the role, you do not destabilize the system. You humanize it. If this exposed something you recognize in yourself, consider liking the video and subscribing.